the only thing we want to be careful of. And now, without further ado, I want to bring out everybody from Solo. This is very exciting. First of all, our director, Ron Howard. We also have Paul Bettany, driving boss. Jonas Suotamo, Chewbacca. Emilia Clarke, Kira. Alden Ehrenreich, Han Solo. Donald Glover, Lando Calrissian. Woody Harrelson, Tobias Beckett. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, L333. Tandy Newton, Val. And our wonderful, wonderful writers, Lawrence Kasdan. And Jonathan Kasdan. Thank you all so much for coming out this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Now, Ron, you have made some huge films, some of the greatest movies of all time. What was it like making a Star Wars movie, though? How was that different?
Well, it's its the galaxy far, far away, and you know, and the level of anticipation is really unlike anything that I've done. Even some pretty big titles with a lot of fan interest, and you fall into it, and it's amazing. It was a little bit. I began to recognize, as something similar to the Beatles documentary that I took on. Because I'm at a point in my life where I like experimenting, I like to take some chances, I'm not too worried about the outcome, I want to just have the creative experience. And I sort of felt that way about jumping into a Star Wars movie, but I also felt that way about jumping into the Beatles documentary, and then I could tell from the moment it was announced, Ron, don't fuck this up, that was so I immediately, felt the same thing as related to this.
Were people worried?
Of course, the fans care, and they should care.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to note, Star Wars movies, known for incredible practical sets, also for visual effects. How did you feel about combining the two? Did you want to lean more towards one? Did you want to experiment with both in a big way?
As great as visual effects and CGI is, even all the great CGI VFX supervisors will tell you, in camera is always what you want to go for first. And so, with the Millennium Falcon and with the great sets and so forth, the approach here always was try to get as much in camera as you could, and then build with it. And that's what's so magical and amazing about ILM and what they can do to make the experience as palpable and immersive as it can possibly be. It's a blast because the people around a movie like Solo are so dedicated to not just what's existed before, but what else they could do within that framework, within that universe, that galaxy. And creatively, it's just unbelievably stimulating for a filmmaker.
It looks amazing. It came out just absolutely beautiful.
Bradley Young did a great job with the look, which is a little different than in the movies I've looked before, and an aesthetic that I thought was incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Lawrence and Jonathan, I wanted to talk to you about this as well because, this is a story that you have been wanting to tell for a very long time. You were talking to me on the Star Wars show about how much you loved Han and wanted to tell a Han story. When the two of you sat down together, was this a story that had been bubbling sort of in your head for a while, or did you sit down and kind of create it fresh together?
Well, the story hadn't been bubbling for a long time. What had been bubbling for me was from the moment when I was relatively young and I first saw Han Solo in the cantina. And I immediately sparked to him. He lifted up the whole movie instantly, and I loved the movie. But at that moment I thought, oh, this movie's just got me. This is the kind of character that I have loved always. And it's so important in all the movies that I care about. This is a character who's reckless, who's cynical, doesn't trust anybody, who's a little bit stupid. I love love that. He just does things he shouldn't do. He gets in over his head instantly. You can see that in the brilliance of George Lucas's cantina scene. It's just a few minutes, and you get everything about who this guy is.
And I think he wanted me to write it with him because I am. No, it was funny because Larry had decided to get involved in Star Wars based on Han. That was the movie he wanted to make first. He got pulled into Force Awakens, and when he came out, he said, I need somebody to do this with me. And I was sort of the obvious choice for the above reasons, but also because I shared a deep love of this, and I came at it from a totally different place than Larry did. I had grown up with Star Wars, I had grown up playing with the toys, and we thought that somehow between our two dynamics, between me as a fan and him as an older Jedi Master, we could figure out some sort of dynamic where we could forge a story that felt both sort of contemporary and true to the spirit of Solo.
Yeah. And hearing about how just seeing the first few moments of Han was just such a huge thing for everybody who's a Star Wars fan. Alden, what did it feel like for you to kind of step into that and sit down in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon?
Yeah, it's really wild, it's really exciting, it's kind of bigger than you can even wrap your head around. And it's wonderful, particularly being in the Millennium Falcon is very, very cool. And very much like being in the cockpit. You know, you kind of get into the cockpit. For me, it was two things. One, you get in and you can't believe you're in it, and it's so surreal, and that's what everybody you bring to set wants to see, and they have that experience too. And then, you know, a couple months into shooting in it, you're inside of it, you're flying it, you know where the buttons are, you know how the chair feels, you know the yoke, and you feel like, okay, this is kind of like my ship now. And that is deeply gratifying.
And I wanted to bring up, you had kind of an experience this morning, an experience that was very unique.
Unbelievable, oh my God. So I had lunch right before we started shooting, I wanted to talk to Harrison, just to kind of pay respect and have him give us the blessing for the film. And so we had lunch, I guess, 2 years ago or something, and he was really encouraging, really supportive, and then we went off, shot the film and everything like that. And today I was doing an interview and they were talking about, you know, is there anything else you'd like to ask him? Because he's, and I was like, well, I don't know. And they're like, well, you have a chance, and he was behind me, and he came, and just is so effusive about the movie. And it meant so much to me, and I know for Ron and Kathy and everybody, you know, it's just such a huge deal to have him really genuinely love it. I really genuinely enjoy the film, and it meant a lot to me that he took the time to come out here and do that.
Such a wonderful moment.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was awesome.
Now, Donald, you stepping into the shoes of Lando here. I know you were a big Star Wars fan. Your father was a huge Lando fan, you were telling me. What was that kind of experience like for you? Is that a character that you ever kind of pictured yourself taking on?
I think as much as like any like 7-year-old boy like does, like it was like, yeah, like of course you pretend to be him, and like, you know, I had like a Darth Vader 2, and Darth Vader had like a lightsaber, and I bit it off, and I gave it to Lando. And then my mom wouldn't let me have the lightsaber anymore because she thought I'd choke on it, and like it was really cool. I never thought when I heard they were making these, I told my agent, I was like, if they're making anything with Lando in it, I have to be Lando. And he was like, I hear you, I don't like your odds. And that was exactly what I needed to hear, like, because I really did like audition like it was like the only role I wanted in the world, because it really was. I was just really happy to be part of this experience. Really cool. Yeah, my dad kind of printed me with this kind of Star Wars longing, because it does feel like the Bible to me in a lot of ways.
Well, it's amazing to see the two of you together, and also to see you, Jonas, as Chewbacca. Seeing the three of you together playing these characters. I mean, Chewie is such a popular figure with the fans, and I mean, you tell me, like, anytime you're in the Chewie costume, it doesn't matter who people are, they want a Wookiee hug. It's gotta be kind of, like, amazing to be this incredibly loved character.
Yes, I mean, it's just something that I really, when I got to know that I had a chance, and then when I got to know that I was going to be playing this character, I really couldn't sleep at night, and I was so excited because this was a life changer for me. I was borderline jobless when I got this role. You know? I mean, my now fiance, my then girlfriend, have seen me going from living with my mom to becoming Chewbacca. That's the span of our relationship. She says I've been like this the whole time. It's just now that this behavior suits me. It's funny because this character is so loved, and Peter Mayhew, who created this character along with George Lucas, has been so instrumental in giving me his blessing and giving me some tips in our week-long session together how to be this character. And seeing
you
him
went to a Chewie boot camp.
Exactly, yeah. And the tickets were all sold out, but I was able to squeeze in regardless. And it was fun because I never could have understood what went on underneath the mask of Peter Mayhew. And now that I got to know that, it was so easy going into shooting this film, which is so much about Han and Chewie and everyone, that it was so important to get right for this film.
It was absolutely amazing to watch. It was an unbelievable performance, and it really is. It's more of a Chewie movie than any Star Wars movie has ever been. And in addition to seeing these classic characters return, there are new members of the crew that are absolutely amazing as well. Amelia, I want to talk a little bit about Kira. She has such an air of mystery around her. It has such a classic sort of femme fatale noir movie feeling whenever you see her in commercials and in clips. Tell me, what was it like kind of playing that, and what is her relationship with Han and the rest of the gang?
Yeah, I mean, playing Mysterious is quite a difficult note, I've got to be honest. It was really fun. It's really difficult to talk about because she is a pretty mysterious character. You kind of need to keep tabs on throughout the movie, and so when promoting a movie that you can't really speak too much about, she's harder ones to discuss. But we meet her quite early on with Han, and then they're separated for whatever reason, and when we find her again, she seems to have lived a pretty dark life in that time. So when you re-find her, you can't quite figure out what it is that's happened to her in the time that you haven't been with her, and who it is that she is now. And I think that's a question that kind of keeps coming up throughout the movie.
Yeah, it does feel like this is a movie that's very much, almost more than anything, it's about watching how different people handle having lives that are very full of adversity. It's been very interesting to watch how each one of these characters kind of takes that on. One of the characters, obviously, is Tobias. Beckett very much feels like a Western gunslinger to me, who sort of, he abides by a code, but he's not really going to tell you what that code is, just in case he needs to change the code, maybe. Can you tell us a little bit about what Beckett was like and kind of how you saw him?
Well, I felt it was a really easy character for me to play because he's a scoundrel and a thief. But I think really well written. And I mean, that's the thing that you have to be aware of. A lot of people who are Star Wars fanatics say this is their favorite Star Wars, which is really cool. But Larry and Jonathan really wrote an extraordinary script. And just at the right time, Ron came in and did his magic, and then you have all these wonderful characters. And so it's pretty cool to get to be in a Star Wars that's also phenomenal.
Imagine. And then also in the crew, we have Val. I absolutely love Val Tammy Absolutely amazing. The crew seems to have like a real rapport and has obviously been through a lot together. What was that like kind of playing it, and how does that compare to sort of the vibe of the crew and everybody who played them on set? Sorry, but just the relationship between the crew and then the actual relationship between all of you. How do they differ?
God. I mean, we would have fun. I mean, you were in extreme situations sometimes. The battle sequences. I mean, this room is honestly a quarter of the size of the, cavernous spaces that would be completely taken over. The production design was so amazing. So we would feel like we were in like real sort of battle scenarios with explosions going off and debris and like mud in places you didn't even know you had places. You know what I mean? Like really, it was like a nightmare. And the camaraderie between us was just humour. Always was humour. Just and because obviously we've been shooting for a long time, and some of the stuff that you share and just taking the piss out of each other all the time, because there'd be a lot of situations where helmets would come off and got smeared and things would go wrong. A lot going wrong, by the way. So that camaraderie was really felt. We were really going into battle together. I mean, obviously a sort of fantasy, fun battle, but we were still going into battle.
Yeah, that sort of vibe of just everyone having fun really comes through. And the movie itself has an incredibly fun vibe to it. And speaking of that, I want to talk about L3 Phoebe, who I just think is incredibly fun. So amazing. She is not like any droid we have ever seen in Star Wars before. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes her an individual and what you kind of tried to get across about L3 for the fans?
Well, L3 is a real inspiration to me, so thanks, guys. She's a self-made droid, so she created herself out of parts of other droids, which sounds kind of frightening, actually, when I put it like that. It's like, where did she get those bits? But she created herself out of astromech droids and protocol droids, and so she turned herself into a unique creature that's kind of taller, stronger, more independent than she originally was. So, yeah, she's got a great attitude, and she has... she's very upbeat. Really fun to be around. She's fearless. She's uncensored. She's very funny, and she's a revolutionary. And she has an agenda, which is bigger than the sum of her parts, which is something that's really extraordinary for her character. It's great to play that. Great to play a droid with a message.
She's awesome. And then Paul. Dryden is legitimately terrifying, man. Dryden is spooky. I was very, very creeped out. How did you approach him, and what did you kind of want to do with that character? Because his vibe goes back and forth so quickly.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to play, and again, it's written really beautifully. Thank you, guys. And I, having texted Ron, having said, "Hey, Ron, have you ever spent long winter evenings like I have, wondering why you're not in the Star Wars franchise?" and he said, "Give me a minute." And I was so I came on set really quickly, and he whispered oligarch in my ear, and I went, got it. And it was just lovely to play somebody having come from Avengers, where his vision is fundamentally good, just as somebody who's just deliciously bad and really okay with it. Just no neurosis, no guilt, just super happy about being evil.
And it is, when you bring it back to like the fun, like all of these characters are definitely having fun in their own way, and I think that's the creepiest thing about Dryden is he's having a lot of fun.
I'm sure he's really good at hurting people, and some people are really good at piano or whatever, and you got to practice, right? So he's always trying to keep his eye in.
I want to open it up to everybody in the audience here. I'm sure everybody has a ton of questions. Yes, you, sir, in the cap.
Hi, my question's for Ron Howard. So you came to this movie late. At that point, how hard was it to find the perfect role for your brother Clint?
Well, it was pretty damn easy. I did come into it, late, and there was a lot of work that Phil and Chris had done. Unfortunately, there's creative differences had created. There was this circumstance where they were not going to carry on, and within that, there were a lot of things that were really strong and already worked, and we knew we wanted to keep, and then other things that hadn't been done yet, and other scenes that I was given the opportunity to sort of experiment with and explore. And I sat down with Larry and John, and we started talking about this, that, and the other. And there was this great sort of scene with L3, and it just sort of came up in conversation. That L3 needs somebody to be pissed off at. And I said, my brother. He's kind of pissed off at. Kind of funny when he's doing it.
It is always fun to kind of watch and be like, okay, where's Clint? Where's Clint? There he is!
The fact is, I love working with him. He's a great character actor. He's funny, he's smart, he's a great team player, and he's not in all my movies because if there's not something really juicy and fun for him to do, then of course I don't cast him. But in this case, I knew it would be fun, and he had a blast on it.
Yeah, he was great. He was
just like, hit me harder every time. So that was fun.
Yes.
Hi, my question's for Alden. I wanted to ask you, I'm way over here. I wanted to ask you, you were speaking of speaking with Harrison Ford earlier. I was just wondering, did you study some of his movements, either from the previous film or just other films of his, or did you try to avoid that just to kind of make the character your own? Because I saw a lot of Han, early Han, in some of your movements and facial features, when you moved your face and stuff like that. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, like the way I went about it pretty much was to watch the original movies very early on. And just kind of absorb as much as I could, both of, I think mainly the character, how the character is operating in the world, and Harrison, and the whole Star Wars universe, which is so rich, and there's so much to it. And so I tried to kind of take in as much of that as I could very early, because I had the role for quite a long time before we actually shot. And then move into working on the part and kind of put all that aside and forget about it and play this guy where he is now in his life, because it's most important, I think, that it feels like a real person. And so, yeah, so then I kind of moved into working on this story, this moment in time. Yeah.
Yeah. My question is for everyone. What was the hardest scene to get right and why?
Hardest scene to get right and why? Does anything pop out to anyone?
I blew my first take, which was meeting everybody, and part of that was I had to shake hands with Chewbacca. I kind of started shaking his hand, and I kind of...
It was so embarrassing for everyone.
It was, I went in for a cuddle, and everybody was like, actually everybody was really relaxed about it and said, everybody does that. So.
Yeah, there must be a moment when you first step on and you're finally in costume, you're finally on a set, you're finally just standing in the middle of it, where it's got to be a little bit just sort of daunting and awe-inspiring in a way if you grew up with films, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Every day. I mean, every day you're walking into a new set that these craftsmen and designers who work on these films are at the very height of the world. I mean, they're the best in the world. And you walk into these incredible environments with 300 different creatures that are actually there, that are actually built, and then you do your scene.
When I remember that was the first day I went on set, and I had my son with me, and he was 2 years old, And he didn't know anything about Star Wars, he's 2, right? But we were in this amazing set, it was extraordinary. And I was chatting with you know, the crew and stuff, and my kid just started to walk away, and we watched where he was going. And he was walking towards R2-D2. And everyone kind of moved to the side, and my kid just walked over, and the guy that was operating R2-D2, the remote control, saw my son, knew it was my kid, and started to make R2-D2 kind of chat to my kid, but not in language, in R2-D2 speak. And my son would kind of gabble back, and R2 gabbled to him, and then it ended, I kid you not, with my son hugging R2-D2. And that was the first impression my son has had of that character of Star Wars. But what I mean is, like, this is the stuff that dreams are made of. You know, my little boy doesn't know about anything to do with Star Wars, but these characters have a kind of magnetism that is unparalleled. I mean, for all of us, when we were kids, I was 7 when the first movie came out. I'll never forget it. That scroll of white going into black, John Williams' music. It was, this stuff like imprints on your psyche, you know. So, I mean, that's just, I think that it goes so far beyond even us as filmmakers, just the stuff that dreams are made, really.
I think in terms of challenges that for me, I was very excited about the character relationships, because this is a little bit different than the other movies. It's really this one guy's adventure story. It's why I feel like in some ways it's kind of similar to Raiders of the Lost Ark, which Larry also wrote. It is a single hero's journey, and there's a lot of fun in that journey, and there are a lot of twists and turns, but it's really about that character. We had that going with this, and so all of the different relationships were very important to me, because it's all about what impact all of these characters are going to have on this young Han Solo. So that was interesting. But what surprised me was how complicated and exciting and fun it was to stage the big action scenes, which is something that I hadn't done in a long, long time. And they were complicated, and sometimes it was hard, and sometimes it was physically difficult. And we would change things and add and revise. But the excitement was, again, making even the action scenes be cool, be Star Wars, but really be about testing Han Solo. What does this mean? What does this tell us about Han Solo? And so it sort of defined the way the action scenes would be cut, would be shot, and roll out. And it was challenging, but it was really fun and exciting work. And the big surprise for me is what a blast it was to do those action.
Yes, in the front row.
Hi, this is Sarah from Skywalking from Neverland. And I had a question for Phoebe and perhaps the cast-ins. And there's a line in the movie where Lando says to L3, you know, oh, can I get you anything else? And L3 says, equal rights. And I think that's one of the most hilarious lines in the film, because it's not only a commentary on what L3's character is, but it's a commentary on today. And so I wondered, did you come up with that, yes, or was that a line that they...
That is Phoebe Waller-Bridge. No, I mean, it's a real treat to work with everyone on this panel, but it's to be able to sort of write situations and then have performers and writers in their own right who can contribute a better idea on top of what you've created is a big part of it, you know, and it makes us look good and it makes everybody feel good, you know, because there is always a way that these things can be enriched and made more on point with what it's supposed to be about, and that is a perfect example of something that just feels totally true to her character and to what we want it to feel like. You know?
Yes, and right over here.
So my question is for Donald and a quick comment for Ron. You had so many awesome capes in this film. Did you have a favorite? You get to take one home. And Ron, thank you for giving Warwick a line.
I had at the end of the film, there's a tiny white summer cape that like stops like right here. It's like it's not functional at all. It's literally just to be like I'm here. And
Oh, the function of a long one, you know, you can be like, oh, I'm cold. You know, a summer cape is literally just more fabric on your back. Just stay your plane, it's like, I'm not giving up on this cape. So, and I love that cape because it really is, it's all flare. And
No, I wasn't able to bring any capes home with me. I'm sure that, you know, Star Wars has that on stock, but the fur cape I had, they had extra material and they made a pillow out of it for me. And now I have a pillow that I try and wear as a cape.
But it winds up being a summer cape.
Who do I have to talk to get that pillow made out of my costume?
Out of your costume? You mentioned Warwick. What a great guy. You know, of course, he did Willow, but he'd been an Ewok before that, and so so he's a tradition and another master. And the other thing is that he helps out with a lot of the characters and a lot of the droids and things like that, and he will come in. And he goes uncredited. He loves it, but the company is smart enough to bring him in and not only play a character, but also help with coaching and setting up and figuring out some of these behaviors. And he's a really creative guy, an old friend. It was great to reunite with him.
Yeah.
And his daughter as well was there with us on set.
Yes.
In some of the droid fights, it's the two of them against each other.
Yeah.
It was incredibly fun.
But I love that because that brings something into my mind, kind of honoring these traditions and these sort of things that everybody knows as part of the Star Wars universe. What I love about this movie is that there are these nods to things that everybody knows from Star Wars. But number one, they're kind of turned on their head a little bit. They're not what you expect. And number two, it's not a movie that's very much like, look at this Star Wars reference. There's a great balance of that stuff. And I would love to hear from Larry and John and from you, Ron, about how you kind of keep that balance for fans and still make the film have its own sort of feeling.
Well, I'm going to start and quickly throw that because I approach it, and I'm a fan, and I've always appreciated the movies, but I'm not encyclopedic. I don't know everything. I haven't seen everything. I haven't read everything. And so I came into this situation, and immediately, of course, I had to start working more off of instinct than anything else, and this great screenplay that I really believed in, and a cast that I certainly wouldn't have come, on board if I didn't love the cast and was excited about working with them. But I immediately said, I'm going to treat this like it's a true story. I've done a lot of true stories, and I always have technical advisors around. And I sort of go for the heart, I go for the drama, the excitement of the narrative, of the story, and then I let the technical advisors tell me, where else it can go or what I might be overlooking. And that's honestly the way I approached this. So many people around it were those guides for me, but I was just operating off my own imagination and my own sort of sense of what I'd like to see or where I think these characters could be going. But now they really understood it, and John in particular, who stayed throughout the production, he is encyclopedic, and he was awesome in terms of contributing those sort of things and sort of evaluating.
Yeah.
Well, when I got involved back on The Empire Strikes Back, I don't think I ever thought of it, this is Star Wars. I thought what had gotten me when I had no connection to it on A New Hope was this is a great story. And George had set up something that could go off in many different directions and that would be wonderful for a long time. And I've never really changed my opinion of that. It happens to be a Star Wars story, but always first we're trying to tell a story that would keep you interested. You meet these people and you say, well, that's a great person, and now they're meeting a great person. And they're going to be in a lot of trouble together. And that is much more important to me than any particular Star Wars.
We approach the movie much more in terms of, is there a kind of genre movie, a crime movie, a Western, that we could fit Han Solo into, a character that we loved and that comes out of a great tradition of Bogart characters and McQueen characters, and say, okay, how do we plug that guy into the kind of movie we love and the kind of story we want to see? And in doing so, we're able to sort of have along the way these moments that are familiar and that people connect with because they have personal relationships with these characters, and it gives it an added level of sort of pleasure, I think. But at its base, it's really trying to be its best version of a Western or of a crime movie.
I think we got time for one more. Let's go to you, sir, blue shirt. You've been raising your hand since the beginning.
All right, this question is for Ron or Alden or the Kazans. In this continually morally ambiguous world that we live in, what kind of challenges do you face with creating the character of Han Solo or even Lando?
Well, so much of it was the heavy lifting was really done by the screenplay, and then the great casting, which preceded me. And again, as I said, I wouldn't have come on board without that. So you know, what I love is collaborating. I love collaborating with Kazan. I love collaborating with this cast, and sort of rallying behind, you know, what was an opportunity that I think we all believed audiences could really enjoy. So it was always just, what can this scene be? What else can it be? What are the other choices? Engaging, you know, incredibly talented, creative people to maximize what was a great opportunity. But you're asking the cast too.
Yeah, I think let's go to Larry and John. Like
on that,
the question of moral ambiguousness.
That's not too difficult in the world we live in. I think that we're swimming in it every day. And what seems like a fantasy now, not as interesting to me, is a thing that is a vision that doesn't take in how complicated people are. The fact that people we admire can do things we don't admire. That we're driven by forces that we may not be proud of. And then sometimes we rise to the occasion and do the right thing. And you can't be counted on that it's going to happen, but we hope that might happen. So that world is, for me, the world that we live in.
And Star Wars so often, and almost really up till this moment, has been a very classic story of the dark and the light, the good and the evil. And we saw this as an opportunity, and what was exciting to us about writing this was to really make a character movie where every character had some ambiguity to them. And everyone was sort of after their own particular ends. And that informed every stage of the writing. But yeah, there are challenges also to, you know, when The New Hope came out, it was a different world. And, you know, you hope as writers and as filmmakers and the entire cast that the world that we live in now is reflected in our art. And we try to be sort of faithful to what we think is appropriate for the times, you know, and how our perception of Han would evolve in 20.
That's my favorite part of the movie, really. I love that there are like rich people and poor people in the movie, and like go to the airport and you see like immediately who's rich and who's poor, and like why they're there. I just love it. Because it's really, yeah, like that was the part of reading it. I was like, oh, this is, you get to see why Han is complicated. Like,
yeah.
Even by the end, it's like, yeah, maybe he did the wrong thing for the right reasons, maybe the right thing for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely.
That's how everybody has to live. It's like a rough world out there, like, and I really love that it's not simple, you know. Yeah.
And I mean, it's such a big part of what drives the movie for us is that he is centrally conflicted. At his core, there is this conflict, and it's beautifully laid out in A New Hope between his ideals and his desires. And he's constantly at war with that, and he's at war with that in this movie, and he's at war with it in all the movies that will follow in his life. And that's a very fun, sort of charged thing to write.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time. Thank you all for coming out. Cast and filmmakers of Solo, Star Wars story.